3 minutes. That's all they needed to erase my 8 years of dedication. One phone call that started with, "Lauren, we need to talk," and ended with, "effective immediately." No warning, no explanation worth believing. Just a clinical execution disguised as corporate restructuring. But it only took me 4 days to take their biggest client, the $1.5 billion contract that kept their stock price floating. By Friday close, I watched their shares crater on the NASDAQ ticker. Hundreds of millions evaporating in real time. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They calculated wrong. My name is Lauren Mitchell. And until 10:47 a.m. on that Tuesday morning, I was the vice president of business development at Aurelian Partners, one of Chicago's most aggressive investment firms, 39 years old, 8 years with the company, and responsible for bringing in over $3 billion in managed assets. I'd built my reputation on being the closer, the one they sent in when negotiations got ugly, when clients needed convincing, when deals hung by a thread. I was in my corner office on the 42nd floor, reviewing the final proposal for Falcon Tech Holdings. 18 months of cultivation, countless flights to their Silicon Valley headquarters, dinners with their CEO Evan Clark, where we'd talked strategy until the restaurants kicked us out. The $1.5 billion portfolio management contract was mine. I'd earned it. My assistant knocked. "Miles Carter on line 1, says it's urgent." Miles, our CEO, a man who usually communicated through intermediaries unless he wanted something. I saved my work and picked up. "Lauren, we need to talk about the company's new direction." His voice had that practiced neutrality that corporate executioners perfect. I'd heard it before when he'd called other departments. Never thought I'd be on the receiving end. "I'm listening. Miles. The board has decided to restructure the business development division. We're making changes effective immediately." My fingers tightened on the phone. Outside my window, Chicago stretched out in morning sunshine, oblivious. "What kind of changes?" "We're eliminating redundancies. Your position is being dissolved." Redundancies, 8 years. And I was redundancy. "Miles, I'm 3 days from closing Falcon Tech. We're talking about—" "The decision is final. HR will contact you about severance. You have 1 hour to collect your belongings. Security will escort you out." "This is about Sophie Grayson, isn't it?" The silence told me everything. Sophie, the new hunter he'd brought in 6 months ago. Young, ambitious, and rumored to be warming more than just her office chair after hours. "I'm sorry, Lauren. The decision is final." 3 minutes and 14 seconds. I know because I stared at the call timer after he hung up. That's all the time it took to dismantle everything I'd built. I didn't throw anything, didn't scream. I sat there, watching the cursor blink on the Falcon Tech proposal, a document that would never bear my signature. Around me, the office continued its normal rhythm. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, deals being made. None of them knew that one of their own had just been executed via conference call. An hour. They gave me 1 hour to pack 8 years into a cardboard box while security watched. But as I started pulling awards off my wall, a different plan began forming. They thought they knew me, the consummate professional who'd take her severance and fade away. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. The security guard, Marcus, had the decency to look uncomfortable as he watched me pack. We'd shared elevator rides for years, talked about his daughter's college applications. Now he stood there like a prison warden, making sure I didn't steal any company secrets on my way out. "I'm sorry about this, Ms. Mitchell," he mumbled. "Just doing your job, Marcus." I wrapped my University of Chicago MBA diploma in bubble wrap, movements deliberately calm. Inside, my mind raced through timelines, connections, possibilities. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake Morrison, my former analyst who'd moved to Goldman 2 years ago. Heard through the grapevine, Sophie G. was in Miles's office all morning yesterday. Connect the dots. Sophie Grayson, 28 years old. Harvard MBA, killer instinct wrapped in Prada suits. She joined Aurelian 6 months ago from a boutique firm in Boston. brought in personally by Miles. The late nights at the office suddenly made sense. The way she'd been shadowing my moves on the Falcon Tech deal, asking questions that went beyond normal curiosity. I pulled up my calendar on my phone while pretending to check messages. 3 weeks ago, Miles reassigned my junior team members to Sophie for developmental purposes. 2 weeks ago, my signing authority mysteriously glitched in the system, requiring his approval for expenses over $10K. Last week, Sophie attended the partners meeting while I was conveniently double-booked with a client call. They'd been setting this up for weeks. Another text, this time from Rachel Park. Our CFO. Lauren, what the hell? The Falcon Tech deal is supposed to close Friday. This is insane. I typed back. Ask Miles. I'm sure he has a plan. 20 minutes into my packing, Sophie herself appeared at my door. Fresh manicure, that ambitious gleam in her eyes poorly disguised as sympathy. Lauren, I just heard. This is such a shock. Is it? I placed my client achievement awards into the box, each one a reminder of deals she'd never have closed. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The pretense dropped. Look, I want you to know this wasn't personal. It's just business. The company needs fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives? I laughed, short and sharp. Is that what you call it? The Falcon Tech relationship needs someone who can take it to the next level. Miles thinks with parts of his anatomy that have no business making strategic decisions. I sealed the box with tape, the sound ripping through her practiced speech. But here's what you don't know. Sophie. Falcon Tech isn't just a contract. It's a relationship. Evan Clark doesn't do business with companies. He does business with people. And that person has been me for 18 months. Her confidence flickered. People are replaceable. I've already scheduled a call with their team for this afternoon. I shouldered my laptop bag, picked up my box. Good luck with that. When Evan asks why I'm not on the call, be sure to explain how eliminating redundancies was more important than continuity. I'm sure he'll find that very reassuring when he's about to hand over $1.5 billion. You wouldn't dare sabotage. Sabotage. I moved past her toward the door. I don't need to sabotage anything. You just fired the only person at Aurelian who knows that Evan's daughter is applying to Northwestern, that he's allergic to shellfish but too polite to mention it at business dinners, that his biggest concern about this deal isn't the returns. It's whether we understand Falcon Tech's mission to revolutionize clean energy infrastructure. The color drained from her face. She hadn't done her homework. Of course she hadn't. She'd been too busy focusing on Miles to focus on the actual job. Marcus escorted me through the lobby, past the reception desk where I'd walked thousands of times. The security cameras tracked our progress. Standard procedure, make sure the terminated employee doesn't make a scene, doesn't compromise security, doesn't upset the natural order of corporate life. But as the elevator descended, I wasn't thinking about scenes or security. I was thinking about chess moves. They'd sacrificed their queen to promote a pawn. Forgetting that in the real game, the queen can return to the board. My phone buzzed one more time as Marcus walked me to the parking garage. Evan Clark. Lauren, trying to reach you. Sophie Grayson just called to schedule a meeting. What's going on? Call me ASAP. I smiled for the first time in 3 hours. They thought they'd calculated every variable. They calculated wrong. I sat in my car for exactly 3 minutes after Marcus left, engine running, heat blasting against the November cold. Then I called my lawyer. Diana, I need you to review my non-compete. Tonight? Diana Castellano had been my attorney for 5 years, a shark in Armani who'd negotiated my last 2 contracts. They fired you? Those idiots? Send me everything. My second call was to Robert Kim, a headhunter who'd been courting me for years. Rob, hypothetical question. If I wanted to set up my own advisory firm, how fast could we move? For you, I could have incorporation papers ready by morning. Lauren, please tell me Aurelian finally pushed you too far. Something like that. I'll call you in 2 hours. I drove home to my Lincoln Park townhouse, mind cataloging assets and obstacles. 8 years at Aurelian meant I knew where every body was buried. but it also meant legal constraints. The non-compete would be the first battlefield. By 6 p.m., I had my war council assembled in my living room. Diana with my contracts spread across the coffee table, Rob with incorporation documents, and James Walsh, a forensic accountant who'd helped me structure some of Aurelian's most complex deals. "Your non-compete is Swiss cheese," Diana announced, highlighting clauses. "They were so eager to get you on board 8 years ago. We negotiated exceptions they've probably forgotten exist. You can't solicit Aurelian's existing clients unless they approach you first. You can't use proprietary information, but relationships and public knowledge are fair game." "And if Falcon Tech hasn't signed yet?" I asked. She smiled like a barracuda. "Then they're not a client, they're a prospect, free agent." Rob pulled up his laptop. "Mitchell and Company, LLC, clean, professional. Yours. I can have the filing done tonight, website live by morning. What's your timeline?" "Falcon Tech expects to sign Friday. That gives me 3 days." James looked up from his calculations. "You'll need operating capital, initial setup, legal retainers, operational costs." "I've got that covered. 8 years of bonuses, invested wisely." I'd never touched it, some instinct warning me to keep a war chest. "What I need is positioning." Sophie called Evan at 2 p.m. By now, she's realized he won't take another meeting without me. My phone, silent since I'd left the garage, suddenly exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from Aurelian numbers. I scrolled through, ignored them all, then found what I was looking for. A text from Evan. "Lauren, reached you at office. They said you're no longer available. This is concerning. Falcon Tech needs continuity. Please advise." "Moment of truth," Diana said. "You respond to that. You're dancing on the edge of the non-compete." I typed carefully. "Evan, no longer with Aurelian as of today. If you'd like to discuss Falcon Tech's future independently, I'm available. Your call." Send. The room held its breath. My phone rang within 30 seconds. "Lauren, what the hell happened?" Evan's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Corporate restructuring. Apparently, I'm redundant. 3 days before we sign. Are they insane?" "That's one interpretation. This Sophie person, she knows nothing about our objectives. Kept talking about returns and exit strategies. We're not looking for an exit. We're looking for a partner who understands we're building infrastructure for the next century." I met Diana's eyes. She nodded. "Evan, I understand Falcon Tech's vision because I helped shape the strategy. That hasn't changed. What's changed is my ability to deliver it through Aurelian." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if you want the same strategic thinking, the same commitment to Falcon Tech's mission, I can provide that, just not through Aurelian." The pause stretched. In my living room, 3 of Chicago's sharpest minds waited for a $1.5 billion decision. "You have something in mind?" Evan finally asked. "Mitchell and Company, independent advisory. Same expertise, same commitment, without the corporate politics that just cost you your primary contact." "When?" "Tomorrow, New York, your office. I'll have a full proposal ready." "Done, 2 p.m., Lauren?" His voice softened slightly. "They made a mistake." "Yes," I said. "They did." I hung up and looked at my team. "We have 18 hours to build a company capable of handling a $1.5 billion client." Rob cracked his knuckles. "Then we'd better get started." Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness, somewhere in the loop. Miles Carter was probably celebrating his brilliant maneuver with Sophie. They had no idea their perfect plan was about to detonate. By tomorrow night, I'd either be unemployed or unstoppable. I was betting on unstoppable. The Acela Express to New York left Chicago at 7 a.m. Wednesday. I'd slept 3 hours, fueled by adrenaline and purpose. My proposal for Falcon Tech filled my laptop screen, 40 pages of strategic vision that Aurelian would never see. Diana called as we hit Indiana. "Miles knows. He's threatening legal action if you poach Falcon Tech." "Let him threaten. They fired me." Falcon Tech reached out, Everything's clean. There's more. Sophie's on a flight to New York right now. Private jet. They're going full court press. I stared out at the frozen farmland blurring past. Of course they were. Miles had probably promised Sophie the Falcon Tech commission as part of their arrangement. Now both their reputations hung on salvaging a deal they'd torched with their own arrogance. Thanks for the intel. How'd you find out? Rachel Park, your former CFO, is apparently having second thoughts about the new regime. Says the board's asking hard questions about why their star rainmaker was terminated 3 days before closing the firm's biggest deal. By the time I reached Penn Station, I had 17 messages from various Aurelian executives. The panic was setting in. I ignored them all and focused on the only message that mattered, from Evan. Slight complication. Aurelian insisting on a joint meeting. Sophie Grayson and Miles Carter will be there. Hope that's acceptable. I typed back, your conference room, your rules. See you at 2. The Falcon Tech offices occupied 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking Bryant Park. I'd been here dozens of times, but never as a free agent. The receptionist smiled with recognition. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Clark is expecting you. Conference room A. I was deliberately 15 minutes early. Time to claim territory, review notes, project calm while my former colleagues scrambled. The conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan in winter light. I set up at the head of the table, a small power play. But every detail mattered now. Sophie arrived first, trying to hide her surprise at seeing me already positioned. She'd changed clothes since yesterday, upgrading to what looked like her most expensive suit. Fear dressed as fashion. Lauren, I didn't expect that I'd show up? That Evan would want to hear from someone who actually understands his business? I arranged my materials with practiced calm. Sit anywhere you'd like, Sophie. Miles entered 5 minutes later, his usual swagger dampened by uncertainty. He'd flown to New York personally. That told me everything about their desperation level. Lauren, he nodded stiffly. This is highly inappropriate. Is it? I'm no longer your employee. Falcon Tech invited me. Unless there's something in my terminated status that prevents me from pursuing independent opportunities. His jaw tightened. We both knew the non-compete couldn't touch this. Evan Clark arrived precisely at 2 p.m., flanked by his CFO and general counsel. He shook hands with Miles and Sophie perfunctorily, then clasped mine with both hands. Lauren, thank you for making the trip. Always, Evan. The battle lines were drawn across polished mahogany. Aurelian on one side, Mitchell and Company, party of one, on the other. Falcon Tech holding court in between. Miles launched first. Evan, I want to apologize for any confusion around Lauren's transition. But I assure you, Aurelian remains completely committed to Falcon Tech. Sophie has been fully briefed and is ready to exceed your expectations. Sophie nodded eagerly, pulling out a presentation that looked suspiciously like my work with minor cosmetic changes. Mr. Clark, I've reviewed the portfolio strategy and identified several optimization opportunities. Stop. Evan held up a hand. Before we discuss strategies, I need to understand something. Miles, why did you fire the person who shepherded this relationship for 18 months, 3 days before closing? The room crystallized. Sophie's rehearsed smile faltered. Miles shifted in his Italian leather chair. It was a strategic restructuring. Bullshit! Evan's voice cut like winter wind. Try again. I stayed silent, letting them hang themselves with their own rope. Miles tried another angle. The partnership was becoming too dependent on a single individual. We needed to institutionalize the relationship? By firing that individual without warning, without transition? Evan's CFO leaned forward. That's not institutionalizing. That's destabilizing. Sophie attempted damage control. Mr. Clark, I understand your concerns. But I've studied Lauren's work extensively. I can replicate. Replicate? I finally spoke, voice calm as morning coffee. Evan, has Sophie mentioned your daughter Emma's early admission to Northwestern? or that Falcon Tech's Indonesia project needs restructuring, not for returns, but because of the new environmental regulations that take effect in March, or that your biggest concern about this partnership isn't performance, it's whether your advisor understands that Falcon Tech isn't just managing money, it's funding the future? The silence was deafening. Sophie's face cycled through confusion, panic, and defeat. She hadn't done the work. She'd been too busy playing politics to understand the actual stakes. Evan stood. I think we're done here. Wait! Miles's composure cracked, revealing the desperation underneath. Evan, please, we can discuss terms, adjust the team structure. The terms were never the issue. Evan remained standing, his general counsel already packing up. Trust was, and you destroyed that with a 3-minute phone call. Sophie made one last attempt. Mr. Clark, if you could just give me a chance to prove what? That you can memorize someone else's work? He turned to her with the disappointed look of a teacher catching a student cheating. You've had 2 interactions with my team. Both times, you've demonstrated you don't understand our mission. That's not your fault. Understanding takes time. Time Lauren invested. Time you thought you could shortcut. Miles stood too, trying to salvage authority. If you walk away from Aurelian, you're walking away from one of the most established firms in Chicago. Your resources just fired the one person who understood how to deploy them for Falcon Tech. Evan's CFO slid a folder across the table to me. Ms. Mitchell, we've prepared a preliminary engagement letter. Perhaps we could discuss details after the room clears. The blood drained from Miles's face as he realized what was happening. Not just a lost deal, a public execution of Aurelian's credibility. This is interference with a client relationship, he sputtered. We'll pursue every legal remedy. What client relationship? Diana Castellano's voice came from the speakerphone I'd strategically dialed in. Falcon Tech hasn't signed anything with Aurelian. There's no contract, no letter of intent, just discussions that you terminated when you fired the principal relationship manager. I'd kept Diana on mute, but listening, another chess piece positioned in advance. Sophie gathered her unused presentations, hands shaking slightly. The reality was sinking in. She'd been played as badly as she'd tried to play me. Miles had dangled the Falcon Tech commission like a prize, and she'd jumped without checking if the safety net existed. Lauren! Miles tried one more angle, his voice dropping to negotiation mode. We could discuss your return. The restructuring was premature. I'm sure we could. No. I let the word hang in the air like a verdict. You made your choice Tuesday at 10:47 a.m. I've made mine. They left in silence, Miles first, Sophie trailing like a scolded student. The door clicked shut with the finality of a closing chapter. Evan sat back down, his general counsel and CFO flanking him. The atmosphere shifted from confrontation to collaboration. That was unpleasant, he said, but necessary. Now, let's discuss how Mitchell & Company handles our portfolio. I opened my proposal. The real one. Not the sanitized version Sophie had stolen. First, we need to address the Indonesia environmental compliance issue. I've identified 3 strategies that align with both regulatory requirements and Falcon Tech's sustainability goals. For the next 2 hours, we built a partnership on the ashes of Aurelian's arrogance. Every page of my proposal reflected the 18 months of understanding Sophie couldn't replicate and Miles couldn't value. We discussed not just returns and ratios, but vision and values, the intangibles that transformed a vendor relationship into a strategic alliance. There's one more thing, Evan said as his team prepared the final documents. The announcement timing. I understood immediately. You want to go public before Aurelian can spin the narrative. Friday morning, before market open, Falcon Tech selecting Mitchell & Company as our exclusive advisor for the $1.5 billion alternative energy portfolio. He smiled with the satisfaction of a chess master completing a perfect game. Unless you have any objections. None at all. The contracts were signed by 5:47 p.m. Thursday. Diana had couriered the final versions, bulletproof and unassailable. My phone had logged 43 missed calls from Aurelian numbers, escalating from Miles to board members as news traveled up the panic chain. I celebrated with a single glass of champagne in my hotel room, watching Manhattan light up like a circuit board. Tomorrow, the financial press would carry the story. Monday, Aurelian would face their shareholders' wrath. But tonight, I savored the quiet victory of preparation meeting opportunity. They'd given me 3 minutes of disrespect. I'd returned 4 days of devastation. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel Park. Board meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. Friday. Miles is done. Sophie's packing. You're a legend. I typed back, I'm just someone who remembers that business is personal. They forgot. Outside, New York hummed with its eternal energy. Somewhere in Chicago, Miles Carter was learning what happened when you confused power with wisdom. And Sophie Grayson was discovering that ambition without ability was just expensive failure. The game was over. I'd won without throwing a single punch, just by being exactly who they'd tried to erase. Friday morning, 6:47 a.m., I stood in my hotel room, CNBC muted on the screen, watching the pre-market futures while my phone charged silently on the desk. Diana had advised me to keep it off until after the announcement. Let them scream into the void, she'd said. At 7 a.m. sharp, the news broke. Falcon Tech Holdings selects Mitchell & Company for 1.5B portfolio management. The Bloomberg headline flashed across the screen first, followed immediately by Reuters, then the Wall Street Journal. The financial press moved like synchronized swimmers when blood hit the water. The CNBC anchor perked up as the story hit her prompter. In a surprise move, Falcon Tech Holdings has announced they've selected newly formed Mitchell & Company to manage their $1.5 billion alternative energy portfolio. This comes as a shock to industry watchers who expected Aurelian Partners to secure the contract. Let's go to Chicago for more on this developing story. I turned on my phone. 97 messages. 143 missed calls. The number climbing as I watched. The first text I read was from James Walsh. Aurelian pre-market down 11%. Trading halted pending announcement. Then from Rob. Every headhunter in Chicago wants to know if you're hiring. Your legend status is confirmed. I ignored the rest and switched back to CNBC. Their Chicago correspondent stood outside Aurelian's building, the same tower I'd been escorted from 3 days ago. Sources inside Aurelian Partners confirm an emergency board meeting is underway. The loss of the Falcon Tech contract, valued at approximately $45 million in annual fees, represents a significant blow to the firm's growth projections. More concerning for investors is what this signals about internal stability at one of Chicago's premier investment firms. The ticker showed Aurelian's stock price in real time as trading resumed. Down 18%, 22%, 27%. My laptop pinged with an encrypted message from Rachel Park, watching Miles get eviscerated in the boardroom. Sophie already escorted out. They're asking how he lost Falcon Tech. He actually tried to blame you for sabotage. General counsel shut that down hard, reminded everyone he fired you. Board member just asked if there are other key relationships at risk. The answer is yes. 3 more clients already asking questions. I ordered room service and watched the massacre unfold with clinical detachment. This wasn't revenge, it was consequence. Market physics as pure as gravity. By 9:30 a.m., when markets fully opened, Aurelian was down 34%. CNBC had assembled a panel of analysts to dissect the unexpected upheaval. This isn't just about one contract, a Goldman analyst explained. It's about judgment. If leadership at Aurelian could miscalculate this badly, firing a key relationship manager days before closing their biggest deal, what other decisions should investors question? Another panelist, someone I recognized from conference circuits, added, Mitchell & Company came out of nowhere. Lauren Mitchell has essentially launched a firm with a $1.5 billion anchor client. That's not a startup. That's a statement. The hotel room phone rang. I'd given the number to exactly one person. Turn on Bloomberg TV, Evan Clark said without preamble. You'll want to see this. I switched channels to find Evan himself being interviewed remotely. Mr. Clark, why the sudden change from Aurelian Partners? There was no change, Evan responded smoothly. Falcon Tech has always partnered with people, not institutions. When Aurelian chose to terminate Lauren Mitchell, they terminated our confidence in their judgment. Mitchell and Company represents continuity of vision and values. The decision was simple. Some are calling this a devastating blow to Aurelian's credibility. I don't comment on other firms' challenges. I can only say that Falcon Tech is thrilled to work with Mitchell and Company. Lauren understands that managing capital in the alternative energy space isn't just about returns. It's about building the future. That understanding can't be replicated overnight. The interviewer pressed, "There are rumors of internal turmoil at Aurelian, suggestions that personal relationships influence business decisions." Again, I won't speculate on Aurelian's internal matters. Our focus is on the future with Mitchell and Company. Professional, devastating, perfect. Evan had just buried Aurelian's reputation without throwing a single stone. By noon, Aurelian had lost 38% of its market value, approximately $400 million, in market cap evaporated. The board announced Miles Carter's resignation to pursue other opportunities. Sophie Grayson's LinkedIn profile already showed previous Aurelian partners. Diana called as I was packing to return to Chicago. Just got off the phone with Aurelian's general counsel. They're not pursuing any legal action. In fact, they're terrified you might countersue for wrongful termination given the circumstances. You're clear. And Miles. Word is he's getting a minimal severance with ironclad NDAs. He'll disappear quietly. Sophie's getting nothing. She was still in her probationary period. Diana paused. How does it feel? I looked out at Manhattan one last time, considering the question. Like justice, not revenge, justice. They made choices. The market rendered its verdict. Poetic and accurate. By the way, I've got 3 more potential clients wanting meetings with Mitchell and Company next week. Seems everyone wants to work with the woman who brought down Aurelian with a 4-day campaign. The Acela back to Chicago felt different than the ride out. No urgency, no battle plans, no adrenaline. Just the quiet satisfaction of a chess match concluded with mathematical precision. I turned down 17 interview requests during the 4-hour journey. Forbes, Fortune, The Wall Street Journal. Everyone wanted the story of how one woman brought a billion-dollar firm to its knees in 96 hours. I declined them all with the same response. Mitchell and Company is focused on serving our clients, not discussing the past. Let the silence speak louder than any interview could. By the time I reached Union Station, the final numbers were in. Aurelian closed down 42%, their largest single-day loss in the firm's history. $800 million in market value, gone. The board had announced a comprehensive review of leadership practices and risk management protocols. Corporate speak for heads would continue to roll. Marcus, the security guard who'd escorted me out Tuesday, was waiting by my car in the parking garage. For a moment, my hand tensed on my keys. Ms. Mitchell, he said quickly. I'm not here officially. Just wanted to say, what they did was wrong, and what you did today. That was beautiful. My daughter's been following the story. Says you're proof that integrity beats politics every time. I smiled, the first genuine warmth I'd felt all week. Tell your daughter that's kind of her. How's the Northwestern application going? His eyes widened. You remembered? I remember the people who matter, Marcus, always have? That weekend, I didn't check my phone once. I hired movers to transform my home office into Mitchell and Company's temporary headquarters. Monday would bring new challenges, staff to hire, systems to build, promises to keep. But I'd build it right this time. No palace politics, no compromise of values for valuations. Sunday evening, I did allow myself one indulgence. I drove past Aurelian's building, its windows dark except for security lighting. Somewhere up on the 42nd floor, my old office sat empty, the corner view witnessing nothing. I didn't gloat, didn't even smile. Just observed the natural conclusion of arrogance meeting accountability. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then noticed the international prefix. The text was brief. Ms. Mitchell, I represent a sovereign wealth fund in Singapore. We've been following recent events with great interest. When you're ready, we'd like to discuss a potential partnership. Some of us have been waiting for someone with your approach to become available. L. Chen. I saved the number. The future was calling, and it sounded like opportunity knocking with a $10 billion fist. Monday morning came with January snow and possibility. Mitchell & Company opened for business in my brownstone's converted first floor, a team of 3 with plans for 30. The calls started at 8 a.m., not from journalists or gossip seekers, but from clients who'd watched Aurelian's implosion and drawn their own conclusions about where to place their trust. Rachel Park was my first hire, bringing 2 decades of CFO experience and intimate knowledge of Aurelian's other vulnerable client relationships. They lost 4 more accounts over the weekend, she reported. The board's in full panic mode. That's their problem now, I said, and meant it. The past was settled. The future demanded attention. 3 months later, Mitchell & Company managed $3.2 billion across 7 clients. We operated from proper offices in the Loop. 47 employees who understood that relationships were built on trust, not org charts. Every hiring decision, every client interaction, every strategic choice reflected the lesson Aurelian taught me. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, but hubris poisons everything. I never spoke publicly about those 4 days in November. When pressed, I'd simply say, markets are efficient at pricing and leadership decisions. Aurelian's shareholders learned that lesson. I hope others were taking notes. Sophie Grayson landed at a small firm in Boston. Her trajectory adjusted to match her actual abilities rather than her connections. Miles Carter disappeared into consulting obscurity. His name a cautionary tale whispered at Chicago finance gatherings. And me? I built the firm I'd always wanted to work for, where merit mattered, where clients came first, where no one got fired in a 3-minute call for someone else's agenda. They gave me 3 minutes to end 8 years. I took 4 days to build a new beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success that speaks so loudly. Your enemies' names become footnotes in your story. The market understood. The market always understands. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel for more real-life tales from the corporate battlefield. And please, share your thoughts. Have you ever turned a career setback into your greatest victory? Your stories inspire mine.